So Dr. Lanette Sobel. So where are we at? Where are we at right now?
Right now we are at the Fertile Earthworm Farm in Davie, Florida. We're about 15-20 minutes west of Fort Lauderdale Airport, International Airport, I should say. We share this space with a couple other entities, including Tree Amigos Growers, which are these guys here, and they also have these two hoop houses over there yonder. And we also share it with Ricky Tree from Garden of Abundance. He has a CSA, and he also has an apothecary, and is going to be distilling essential oils and a juice bar and a coffee bar over in that location. And this whole property is natural chai gardens, so we're under their umbrella, and this is a farm cooperative.
Cool. So what's your background?
I'm a plant doctor. I have a doctorate in plant medicine from the University of Florida. I also have a master's in forest pathology, and my bachelor's is in finance.
Cool. So
I also previously was a worm farmer before I went back to grad school.
And on that topic, you operate Fertile Earthworm Farm.
Yes.
And how did Fertile Earthworm Farm come to be?
I was doing sustainability consulting for hotels, and I would help hotels get green certifications, and I would also audit them for green certifications. And with FAU, I was actually a visiting researcher, and we did a couple waste audits at a couple hotels in South Beach and also in Miami. And we found that there was about 1 ton of organic matter coming out of per room per year coming out of these hotels. So I looked into what to do with it, and there were no commercial options for composting, so I decided to create one.
Nice. So composting's a part of, even though it's called Fertile Earthworm Farm, composting's a big part of it. So could you give us your business model / the process from how do you make this operation work? Like what are all the components in the process?
So we have a garbage truck that's outfitted to handle organic matter, and we pick up food that otherwise is destined for the landfill, and instead of it going to the landfill, we bring it into our operation. So we compost that. So we work with the Marlins Baseball Stadium, Whole Foods Market, Raw Juice, Fully Fresh, Yellow, which is a vegan restaurant, a couple other entities. Levi's was a client of ours too. We also do events. We did Ultra Music Festival last year, and food and wine festivals and such. And that food comes to a farm that we have down the street, about 1/3 of a mile down the street, and we pre-compost that down. We compost it. So we combine it with a carbon source, and we create food for worms. So once we've gotten that compost to where we need it, which really means we've killed off the weed seeds, and we've achieved pathogen kill, we feed that to the earthworms. And then the earthworms poop, and we just, again, started this operation, but the idea is the earthworm castings, the earthworm poop / aka castings, aka vermicompost, which is probably the most acceptable name. We use that in soil blends, specifically for the cannabis industry and for turf. Hemp just became legal not too long ago, I think in the 2018 Farm Bill or 2019 Farm Bill, and Florida just released licenses, and 3,000 people now have licenses to grow hemp. And I have a very good cannabis blend that, like, cannabis loves castings. I mean, almost all plants love castings. So I have that blend, and then we're going to be working with turf companies, and we are also going to be making vermicompost tea. So it's a tea that is made from the actual worm poop, and that's not only a liquid fertilizer but also a pest repellent. So, and then of course we're going to be selling worms.
So you mentioned where you flip the food piles and compost is down the street, but where you farm the worms is right over here.
Yes.
Correct?
Please come this way.
Ooh la la.
So this is our first bed, and this was fish poop. And you'll see a little, yep. You'll see a little guy. These are red wigglers. They're aptly named because they like to wiggle. So let's put them away.
So this bed and
Hello,
it
Lina.
looks like 5 other beds you got here. This is where the worm farming actually happens.
Yeah. So these are really cool beds. These are kind of stupidly expensive, but they do serve a couple amazing purposes. It really cuts down on the amount of labor that I need, because this bed is able to harvest from underneath. Like if you take a look underneath, you'll see a cutting bar. In about 4 months, when the bed is full, this motor operates a cutting bar that slices off. You probably can't see the cutting bar because it's actually underneath the bedding, but it slices off the bottom layer, and that's castings. And so we are able to harvest like pure castings like relatively easily and not disturb the worms doing their thing on top.
Gotcha. Really cool. So composting, worm farming, harvesting castings. What do you provide? What does Fertile Earth Worm Farm, what services do you provide to people in the world? What makes this operation the best operation?
So I think we have a pretty unique business model. I mean, this kind of attacks a couple important issues that we have currently, like in society and the environment. I got into this not because I was interested in growing, now I am, but I got into this as a way to do something better with food than throwing it in the landfill and creating problems for future generations. During the course of this research that I did with Florida Atlantic University, I discovered how landfills actually operate, and that food has no business being in the landfill, and it creates problems for future generations because it's the moisture that from the food that accumulates and trickles through the landfills, picking up heavy metals and toxins, creating this toxic liquid called leachate that we have no idea what to do with yet. It's just like spent uranium rods for nuclear power plants. Like, we don't know what to do with it, and we're poisoning our water supplies, and we're causing just problems for future generations. And the only other thing that Miami-Dade does besides landfills is incinerate. And incineration is pretty silly in my opinion, because there's such a high water content in food. It costs, you have to spend a lot of energy to incinerate something that's wet. So it doesn't make any sense for me. Like, what makes sense for me is bringing it back to the earth like nature intended. So everything in nature is a cycle. There is no such thing as waste in nature. And that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to take a problem and create a solution from it and do something that is sustainable, both environmentally, financially, and socially sustainable. And I think, yeah, I mean, that's the idea. That's what we're trying to do. We want to see the world be a better place. I have a 5-year-old kid, and I don't want her to inherit a world that I don't feel like I at least did something to try and make it better for her.
Beautiful. So I was going to ask you about short-term and long-term goals. So obviously you just mentioned what is overall goal, but as far as any specific short-term goals for the near future you have with the whole operation, maybe specifically the worm farm or composting, like maybe getting new clients, or an amount of castings you want to produce, or just a timeline of when you want castings produced, when you want tea produced, or even longer term goals, like if you want more beds established in other areas.
Yeah,
like
for
that.
Sure. Like, this space can handle another 48-foot long bed. I want to try this out first, make sure that we worked out all the kinks, get everything rocking and rolling. You know, I'm sure there's going to be a couple little tweaks that I want to do here and there. Then we're going to build another bed here and double our production of worms. We take a minuscule part of the food waste that Miami-Dade, Broward, and Palm Beach produce. It's, when I calculate it out, is 0.004%. Like, here just in South Florida, we probably create more waste than most countries. So what I want to do is get more food out of the landfill. I want more clients, pick up more food. I'm looking into getting more land so that I have room to do the pre-composting process and produce more product in the end. But in about 4 months, we'll have castings, and we're going to be we'll start making the teas and the soil blends, and yeah, and we'll just keep going from there. Like, the goal, the near future goal is actually to have multiple locations. So instead of trucking right now we go from Boca to South Beach and back. And we're in Broward because it's a central location and we can service, you know, all 3 counties. But what I would like to see is a location in Miami-Dade, this location in Broward, and another one in Palm Beach, potentially further north in Fort Pierce, in Central Florida, in Alachua, go to Puerto Rico, and then eventually the idea is once we get all the processes figured out and a good set of SOPs, we franchise it. So other people can get involved and this can go viral and we can make a bigger impact, because I know just me doing this on my own, I can make an impact, but I can do so much more if there's a big team behind us.
Right. Got you. Well, thank you, Dr. Sobel.
You're welcome.
You are quite an inspiration.
Aw, thank you.
And thanks for the interview.
No worries.